Hey everyone, I am the Boss Man, and it feels good to be back today. It's been a long couple of months, and what more fitting way to come back than to talk about something that's arguably really important and the most important topic facing the Zelda series and the Zelda fanbase today. A lot has happened since I last got a chance to talk to you all. Face to face, Twilight Princess HD was discovered through data mining, Triforce Heroes released to, let's say, mixed reviews. We got some Nintendo NX stuff we could talk about with those industry-leading chips. But see, all of this pales to the conversation I want to have directly to you. Rest in peace, Mr. Iwata, or Iwata. I'm sorry, still getting that wrong. Rest in peace, man. I want to talk about the Zelda series and the Zelda fanbase in a way that typically isn't talked about. Chiefly, how divided we are. The divide isn't even our own fault, but it is true. We bicker, we moan, we argue with each other. It happens a lot. As an example, some people think that The Wind Waker is an amazing game, while others think it's crap. Some of you guys really love Triforce Heroes, and others think that it's not only a crap game, that it's a cash grab. Some feel Twilight Princess is one of the best Zelda games ever made, and others think it's one of the most disappointing games ever made. There's really nothing the fanbase can seem to come on a general agreement, other than the fact that, hey, we're all Zelda fans, right? And even then, are we? A lot of people debate about that. So, you see, we're divided right now, more so than we've ever been. As an example, what is Zelda? Ask that to 1,000 different people who claim to be Zelda fans, and you're bound to get dozens, if not hundreds, of different answers. I mean, ask yourself right now. I bet your answer is going to be different than mine. I know my answer is different than Shikata's, the guy who directed Triforce Heroes and A Link Between Worlds. He recently said that it's about items and puzzles, and I wholeheartedly disagree with that. But maybe you do agree with it, and that's kind of the fundamental point. We all have our own definitions for what Zelda is. And see, none of us are actually wrong. That's important to remember. You are not wrong. I'm not wrong. Shikata's not wrong. Zelda is all of the things we say it is. But because we feel so steadfast in what we actually like about the series, it tends to clash with people who like the series for entirely different reasons. There is no one definition for what the Zelda series is. Really, it's just all of the above. Yet, here we are, divided, arguing. It needs to stop. Rather, we need to unite again, become one fan base again. There was a time when we were one fan base. But see, we don't need to just be one fan base because the games will sell better, but because it means we've reached an equilibrium where a majority of the fan base is happy again. And happiness is good. Well, I mean, it's really good for you and me and all of us. Of course, I can forgive all of you. Heck, I've participated in a lot of arguments over the years, belittling people who didn't agree with my opinion. I really apologize if you're one of those people, but it's happened. None of this is our fault or my fault. Rather, it's the Zelda series' fault. Chiefly, it's those who hold the most influence over the Zelda series. And it's also those same people we need to turn to in order to make it all right again. Now, before we can understand how it can be made right, which, I don't know, doesn't that seem kind of like an impossible task? I mean, isn't it? We have to understand what went wrong in the first place. Now, of course, there is nothing to do with subjective opinions. I want to make this really clear. This isn't about what I personally feel about the games or what you personally feel about the games. This is just kind of looking at things as objectively as we possibly can as subjective people. We're all subjective, so it's really hard to do this. So we want to look at this really objective and look at taking on a problem that starts at the heart of what the Zelda series is. You see, I classify the Zelda series as having two very distinct eras. There is the Shigeru Miyamoto era and the Eiji Aonuma era. I'm really sorry, I always butcher his name. The Miyamoto era kind of runs from The Legend of Zelda NES all the way through Ocarina of Time on the N64, and then every other Zelda game falls into the Eiji Aonuma territory. Now, this doesn't mean either person is 100% responsible for these eras. If we're going to point out any sort of fingers, it's going to be at the two most important people in the series. But obviously there's been a lot of people behind the series, from Fubiashi and Shikata, and just to name a couple. There's been a lot of people behind the series, including the writers who wrote Mario Galaxy and Majora's Mask, etc. There's just a lot of people behind it. But to understand this all, we have to understand what these two different eras represent. In Miyamoto's 5 Zelda games, the lowest selling Zelda game was Link's Awakening. Understandable, it was the only handheld Zelda game from his era. The Legend of Zelda itself sold north of 6.5 million copies. It's a lot. This supposedly maligned Zelda 2 that I love so much and many of you hate, sold more than 4 million copies. A Link to the Past sold more than 4.5 million copies. Ocarina of Time sold north of 7.5 million copies. And obviously the aforementioned Link's Awakening chimed in right about 3.8 million or so, almost at 4. Arguably over 4 million if you want to count the DX version, which sold 2.2 million or so. But as you can see, nothing really sold under 4 million units, or at least severely under 4 million units. That seemed to be the general consensus of the Zelda fan base, is about 4 million units, 4 million people strong, and then it kind of goes up and down from there by slight margins. Now, as we said, the fan base was kind of connected at the time. 4 million base fans for Zelda. Under Eiji Aonuma, we've seen peaks like Twilight Princess, whose combined sales are north of 8 million. But we've also seen incredible lows, such as Four Swords Adventures, which failed to sell even 1 million copies. The last full Zelda title we've had outside of Triforce Heroes, the one that we actually have sales data for, is A Link Between Worlds, and that only sold about 2.5 million copies. Of course, as they say, sales aren't everything. Miyamoto's era of games were far more consistent in selling 4 million or more units, while Eiji Aonuma's era is all over the place. He's responsible for roughly 13 games that he played at least some role in, and only 2 of them sold more than 4 million units, those being Twilight Princess and, 3 sold more than 4 million, those being Twilight Princess, The Wind Waker, and Phantom Hourglass. Miyamoto's era had that and more in just 5 games released. In fact, 4 of the 5 games he's released sold more than 4 million units. But as I said, sales only paint part of the tale. You see, sales are a really hard thing to pinpoint. There are various factors, such as platform popularity and timing of release. Really, a game released at the launch of a console sells better than one released at the end of a console cycle. However, we don't really have enough data to say that definitively, as it only really applies to 2 games, Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword. But I think we can agree that just about any game would sell better at launch than towards the end. Even if games like The Last of Us on the PlayStation 3 kind of bucked that trend and sold a whole lot at the end of the generation. Either way, Eiji Aonuma and his team can't be blamed 100% for the really random sales figures game to game. It's just a point to bring up because the easiest way to tell how united a fan base is to try to look at things objectively. And the only objective thing we can have is factual evidence, and sales figures are factual evidence. So, setting that aside, Miyamoto's era contained a stunningly similar theme. Each game acted as a natural progression of the previous. Even the 2D side-scrolling Zelda 2 really built upon the original idea, such as adding towns, magic, leveling, and a whole new way to crawl dungeons. It also added new dynamics to combat in a new space, something that would later get expanded upon in Ocarina of Time. Link's Awakening showed that Zelda can work just as well on the go, while Link to the Past took the best from the prior Zelda games and mashed it all together, adding an in-game story to the mix, unlike anything fans had seen before in the series. Then Ocarina of Time built on top of that by bringing, things new to a new whole new dimension. You guys know Ocarina of Time. First 3D Zelda game. Miyamoto's Zelda consisted of consistently improving Zelda experiences built upon the prior games. This is important to remember, because the games had a very similar feel thematically, gameplay-wise, and even visually. And that's saying something for a series that went top-down to side-scrolling to Mario assets, back to top-down, and eventually into 3D. The fact you can play all of those games but really feel like you're playing a Zelda game just by looking at it was impressive. Then Eiji Aonuma came along, and his era began by splitting the fanbase, smashing it into bits and pieces. Instead of a traditional experience, he created a game that had never been seen before. and is unlike any game in the whole series. Is that a bad thing? That's in the eye of the beholder. You, me, everyone else, you know? But it used elements that didn't feel like a natural progression on an established setting and formula, but rather taking a fighter cracker to Ocarina of Time and fitting the pieces back together to create something new. Still, his first foray into the Zelda series took off in a weird direction for most Zelda fans, who weren't accustomed to prior games. It just didn't click for many. Then he followed that up with games like Four Swords or the Minish Cap, the Oracle series, the ever-controversial The Wind Waker. In every instance, something was done that didn't really fit into the pre-established order. Four Swords and Four Swords Adventures were top-down multiplayer experiences. The Oracle series was basically a Pokemon deal where you had 2 games, combined ending. The Wind Waker totally changed up the art style and got rid of field travel, replaced it with boats. The Minish Cap played on a more childish route in terms of visuals. Not saying that the Minish Cap is a childish game. I'm just saying that the visuals catered more to a childlike audience. And that was really similar to the Wind Waker. Anyways, so this hasn't stopped either. Phantom Hourglass forced clunky touch controls, and Spirit Tracks injected trains into things that people didn't like. It kept some of the touch controls and took away a lot of the overworld exploration. Skyward Sword forced motion controls and yet another new art direction, and the list really goes on and on. You can grab every game he did and look at how it doesn't really fit into what Zelda used to be. Twilight Princess kind of stands out as a game that maintained the same visual theme and feel of prior Zelda games, but that's more of an outlier. In fact, it's actually part of the inconsistency we've had throughout this era. All these games are wildly different from each other. Zelda used to not feel different. This is important. It felt familiar. We seem to have lost that in the current era of Zelda games. So, who's at fault? The blame can be passed around. Story writers, directors, the series producer. We can't possibly know how every major decision was made that caused all of this. But the new era smashed into the old era into bits, making us divided more than we've ever been. Seriously, we're really divided. Now, it might sound like I really do not like the aging of Noma era, but seriously, it doesn't mean I dislike this era. I have grown to love the variants in the series. That there's something for everyone kind of approach. I really like Triforce Heroes a lot, and I know that's going to dishearten some of you. I also really like Skyward Sword. It's just one of those things where I like the direction Zelda is heading, but I am worried that my love is part of that problem, because we're divided, and it should not be that way. All of this can be fixed, of course. We're not lost. It's never too late to bring the fanbase back together. Unite us. Twilight Princess proved that, but it's one thing to bring us together, it's another to keep us there. I'm not saying Zelda U needs to be like Twilight Princess. Rather, Zelda U needs to define what the series is going forward. All the games after it need to take direction from it so we can start a new era for Zelda. One where it begins to feel familiar again. Mario always feels like Mario. It's time for Zelda to get that feeling back, game to game. Not just a release once in a while. Zelda U needs to redefine what Zelda is. Then, we need to stick to it, both visually, stylistically, and thematically, or we risk fracturing the fanbase even further. Let's unite again. Hey everyone, it's real talk time, and I'm sorry if this camera's a little shaky. I'm holding it in my hand. I just want to let everyone know that episode was really painful. I put myself in a bad position during recording. A position that I'm never going to be in again. So where have I been the last 2.5 months? Well, I had a baby. I'll put a picture in the video. You can look at him. See how cute he is. Tell me he's bad. He's about 2 months old now. His name's Oliver, so go ahead. Make the Arrow references all you want. I really like the show Arrow, but I didn't name him because of that. It's just kind of a happy convenience. Besides that, we released Zelda Informer 5.0. I hope you've seen it at the site. Enjoy it. We also have a Triforce Hero walkthrough that I'm currently writing. I really hope you guys take advantage of it. Even if you aren't into walkthroughs, at least look at it and give me some feedback. I really want to make our walkthroughs as best as they can be. We got some new forums coming your way, hopefully within the next week or two. And hey, look, I'm back. Boss Man's back. It's been a long hiatus. Let's not take this kind of break again, right? I really hope you enjoyed this week's episode. I did do something different this week that I have not done in any prior episode. I had a script. And I kind of stuck really to the script. I have a feeling that as I get editing this and sending it live, that I'm going to notice a pattern where you could tell I'm reading off a script and not necessarily feeling like a more natural talk like I am now. I hope that's okay with you guys, right? I hope it really improved the quality of what I'm presenting here, because I feel like it was a really important topic today. So yeah, I'm back. Boss Man's back. Yeah, got my Triforce Zero guide here. I know I said that I would not. I would always wear the Robe of Destiny. Well, the Robe of Destiny's down here. I did not forget about the Robe of Destiny. But yeah, Boss Man, I'm back. Glad to be back.